Andreev, he will walk in. He scores! Game one goes to the Mariners on a shorthanded goal in overtime by Matt.
Welcome back, ECHL fans, to another episode of the ECHL Insider Playoff Edition. We have your round one update today. But before we get to that, what you just saw, an incredible shorthanded goal by Max Andreev for the Maine Mariners to give them the win in overtime in game one over Adirondack. What a goal, what a moment for the Mariners fans and that organization as they get a great win in game one. And we will talk about that series later on in the episode. Well, let's start out with the North Division. We will go division by division and give you updates on every playoff series this far into round one. First up, the Reading Royals and the Wheeling Nailers. It is currently 2-0 Wheeling. And really, I mean, to put it plainly, it's been domination by the Nailers, right? 4-0 and 5-1 victories for Wheeling. They have looked really sharp in games 1 and 2 so far. Game 3 will be on Wednesday in Reading. And we talked about a key in this series for Reading was going to be win your home games, right? It's hard to win on the road against this Wheeling team. What are they going to do when they come home on Wednesday night and, try to face this adversity of a 2-0 deficit? You got to change the game plan, though. 1 goal in 2 games is not going to win you many games, right? So it's going to be a challenge, right? They gotta adapt. They've seen Wheeling through 2 games. They've seen them a lot this season. How do they adapt, get some offense going on home ice in game 3? Should be interesting to see that develop. And Adirondack and Maine, we talked about the overtime winner from Max Andreev in game 1. This series looks like it's going to turn out to be a really good one. Currently tied 1-1 through 2 games. Game 3 going to be Wednesday night as well in Adirondack. Should be a really good game, right? We talked about this series a lot in our previous episode. Maine's got to, don't be too big for the moment, right? They haven't ever won a playoff series. Looks like in game 1, that was definitely the case. Game 2 went to Adirondack with a 3-2 win, but both games are 1-goal games, right? So it's been really tight, really close between these two teams. Not a whole lot of open ice, not a lot of run and gun through the first 2 games of this series. So should be very interesting, right? You look at these two teams when they matched up 2 seasons ago in 2024 in the first round, they went to 7 games, right? That series was won by Adirondack. The Thunder would go on to the Eastern Conference Finals and lose to Florida, but that was a really good round 1 playoff series, right? Going all the way to 7 games. So we'll see if this one also goes the distance, but looks really good through 2 games. Let's turn our attention now to the South Division, where it's the Atlanta Gladiators and the South Carolina Stingrays. South Carolina currently holds a 3-1 lead in this series. Look back to game 1. South Carolina wins by 1 on home ice, right? Start off the playoffs good. I don't think that was a shocking game to anybody, a close game, but it goes to South Carolina. Then game 2, another 1-goal game, but it goes to Atlanta, right? And then if you're Atlanta, you're looking at it going, perfect. We got our road split, right? It's 1-1 heading to Atlanta. This is exactly what we wanted. Until it wasn't what you wanted, right? You get shut out in game 3, and then you get dominated offensively in game 4. So that really, complicates things for Atlanta. Obviously, they have to win the next 3 if they're going to win the series. So, just a little bit disappointing on home ice for the Glads. They haven't had a home playoff game in several seasons. You come home and kind of, not to be too, hard on Atlanta, but you lay an egg, right, in games 3 and 4. So, what is Atlanta going to do? Game 5 is Friday night in South Carolina. That's going to be a rocking North Charleston Coliseum. Difficult environment to play in when they know they can wrap up a series. So should be interesting. And you look at the South Carolina viewpoint of this series, chance to wrap it up on home ice, right? You had that last year twice in Game 6 and Game 7 against Orlando and weren't able to do it. I think that's still in the mind of these South Carolina players that were on the roster last year. I think they don't want to let this series go any extra games. I think they want to wrap this up in a Game 5, but it's going to be a good game. I think we talked about the goaltending for Atlanta with TJ Sempton-Felter and Ethan Heider, but, you got to play well in front of them. They've let in a lot of goals to this South Carolina team through 4 games. They got to play defense. It's great to have a good goalie, but a goalie can't forecheck and a goalie can't take away time and space in the neutral zone, right? So that's something that team defense is going to have to step up for the Glads to help prevent some of these goals. We'll see if they can do it and extend the series on Friday night in Game 5. Well, also in the South Division, it's the Savannah Ghost Pirates trailing the series 2-0 to the Florida Everblades. 2 good games, right, in Estero, right? They lose Game 1, 2-0. Then they lose Game 2 on Saturday night. Disappointing for Savannah, but, they didn't go in there and get, blown out 7-0, right? A lot of people were saying this is going to be a sweep, which it still could be. This is going to be really one-sided, but I saw something from Savannah in Game 1 that I liked, right? It was tight checking, it was defensive, but they did get shut out. So, right, you got to put goals in the net if you're going to win a hockey game. And so we'll see if Savannah is able to turn that tide in Game 3 on Wednesday night at home. But I think if Savannah is going to turn the tide in this series, it's going to come down to their rookie, Nicholas Sabanet. He is a talented goal scorer and a talented skater in his first year in the ECHL. See if he can step up a little bit for Savannah, get some goal scoring, get some offensive chances going for the Ghost Pirates in Game 3. Well, we will now shift our attention to the Western Conference playoff series, the Central Division. We'll start with the Indy Fuel and the Fort Wayne Comets. Fort Wayne wins the first games, Game 1 and Game 2 in Fort Wayne. They looked really good in those, but then Game 3 came and Indy showed some pushback, right? With 6 goals on home ice in that Game 3. The series is 2-1 Fort Wayne, but really liked what I saw from the Fuel and the pushback that they showed in Game 3. They're not going to go down 3-0 against this Comets team, which is a very talented team. They captured the Central Division title in the regular season. So this is a very good team. But Indy, impressive what they did in Game 3. See if they can follow it up and tie the series on Wednesday night in Game 4. Definitely a difficult task, but we'll see if they can do it. I think about these two teams going at it in in-state rivalry. They played 5 overtime games against each other in the regular season. So the season series was pretty even, I would say, for the most part, between these two teams. So, a lot of people ask, how much does regular season results factor into the playoffs? My answer to that is it depends. It depends on the teams. It depends on the time of year that they played. Depends on the injuries, the circumstances, right? But I think, you can't take a lot of stock in that, but you can take, hey, these teams were pretty even in the regular season, right? But the series is 2-1 Fort Wayne. We'll see if the Indy Fuel are able to tie the series in Game 4 on Wednesday night. And finally, in the Central Division, the Bloomington Bison and the Toledo Walleye. This series sits at 3-0. Toledo, the only series right now that is 3-0. And it's been the Walleye, right? Really good on home ice. They won Game 1 and 2 there. They went to Bloomington and got the win in Game 3. Now they look to sweep the Bloomington Bison in Game 4. This is a Toledo team that's known for sweeping teams in the first round, right? Go back a few years, they've swept Kalamazoo in the first round. They've swept Indy a few times in the first round. This is a team that likes to not play a whole lot of games in round 1, right? So we'll see if they're able to sweep Bloomington. You look at Bloomington, Nikita Sedov, and what a great year he's had on the back end. He's going to have to contribute for the Bison, but it's been a lot of goal scoring for Toledo so far. Think about Brandon Hawkins. He had 7 goals against the Bison in the regular season. He's looked good in the playoffs so far. And I think a big turning point in this series was Game 2, right? When it was 4-3 at the end of the game, and there's a loose puck in front of the Toledo net. Bloomington's digging at it. They couldn't get it across the goal line at the end of that game. Who knows if the Bison are able to fully complete the comeback and tie that game, go to overtime and win, and the series is 1-1, that's a lot different than a series that's 3-0. So, obviously we can sit here and look at all these hypotheticals, but that was a big point in this series in game 2. The Bison weren't able to tie the game, and that led Toledo to go up 2-0 and then win game 3 and go up 3-0. So obviously going to be a hard task if you're going to come back from 3-0 in a series, but we'll see if the Bison are able to pull off a stunner against the Walleye. But it starts with game 4 on Wednesday night. Now let's talk about the Mountain Division. We'll start with the Tahoe Night Monsters and the Kansas City Mavericks. We have their pucks featured here in front of me right now. Right now it's 2-0, Kansas City, with the series shifting back to Tahoe on Wednesday night. Should be a really interesting dynamic, I think, game 3. How's Tahoe going to come out? Obviously, game 3 is critical for Tahoe. You can't go down 3-0 in any series. That's not a good formula for success, but just, do you take a mental victory out of games 1 and 2? Some people would say yes. Some people would say no. You lose in overtime in game 2. I think that definitely is a little bit deflating for the Night Monsters, that they were that close to getting the split on the road, but they couldn't. It was a very good goal. You'll see that in a second by the Mavericks to go up 2-0. But I think game 3, you got to bring all the energy, all the emotion if you're the Tahoe Night Monsters. I think they got to play it physical, right? You got to come out there and attack Kansas City as good as you possibly can. Give them all you got in game 3, because you don't want to go down 3-0 in the series to the Mavericks. Finally, the Allen Americans and the Idaho Steelheads. This series is over, by the way. A crazy series schedule. They played Thursday and Friday in Allen, and then they played Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday all in Idaho. And it was the Allen Americans defeating Idaho 4-1 in the series. Thursday and Friday went to Allen. Sunday went to Allen, and then Monday was a 5-1 win for Idaho before ultimately being eliminated on Tuesday night with a 6-3 victory by the Americans. A really good feeling for the Americans, obviously to win a playoff series, but to get revenge on the Steelheads. They had lost to Idaho in 2024 in the first round and 2023 in the second round. So finally some revenge for the Americans on a heated rival like the Steelheads. They defeat them in the series 4-1. Think about the head coach of Allen, right? This Allen team was the worst team in the ECHL last year, and they've won a playoff series this year, right? Big turnaround. We talked about it in the offseason with hiring Steve Martinson, who's won a championship in Allen, how important that is. And Steve Martinson knows how to win in the postseason, right? He has 58 postseason wins in the ECHL. That ranks second most all time, only behind Brad Ralph, the head coach of the Florida Everblades. So Martinson knows how to win, right? And I think it was just an amazing hire for the Americans, and it's paid off to this point. They will they will play the winners of Kansas City and Tahoe once that series wraps up. But, congratulations to Allen. They're the first team to move on in the first round, and a really hard-fought series between them and the Idaho Steelheads. Well, that'll do it for our round 1 update. Make sure to check back next week. As soon as round 1 is over, we will give you the updates on that and then a preview of round 2. But before we leave you, want to show you that overtime winning goal from the Kansas City Mavericks. Lucas Sauter burying a backhand 5-hole. Just a great goal and a great win for the Mavericks as they go up 2-0 over the Tahoe Night Monsters. So make sure to check that out now, and we will see you next week for our round 2 preview.
Jones, and played by Carpenter. He enters the zone. Carpenter leaves it for Sauter. Sauter, backhander, score! Score!